Welcome to War Stories. War Stories is a hustle and grit podcast series sponsored by Treadstone Associates. Treadstone has worked with hundreds of businesses to help them dominate their industries. Our success led to the development of a simple 4-stage special ops program called the War Room. The War Room's mission objective is simple: build systems and processes with 3 goals: reduce expenses, increase revenue, and ultimately transform the business owner from a manager to a CEO, from a soldier to a general. Each of the 4 battles in the War Room focuses on a different aspect of your business, from accounting, operations, legal, and more. The foundation of each battle is the battle blueprint. The battle blueprint is a strategic plan prepared by a Treadstone general after evaluating your business's strengths and weaknesses. The battle blueprint includes specific, actionable steps to secure mission objectives. It is time to gather your troops and prepare for battle. For a limited time, you can receive Stage 1 battle blueprints for just $99. That is a $3,500 value. In addition, we are also waiving the fees for Stage 2, 3, and 4 battle blueprints. That is a $29,000 value for free. Click the link below to learn more and to schedule your free enlistment call today. Welcome to another episode of Hustle and Grit. I am your host, Umar. This episode is part of our series titled Movers and Shakers. Movers and Shakers is a series where we interview executives, government officials, and startup founders. Check out our playlist on YouTube for our all-star lineup of guests, including several billion-dollar startup founders. Today, we have a special guest with a ton of experience in the tech industry. Dan Ephraim is the founder and CEO of Espress Labs. With over 20 years of experience in the tech industry, Dan has grown this small creative studio based out of Toronto, Canada, to a multinational service provider. Espress Labs has worked with major institutions in Canada and the United States to provide software development, web design, and other services. Notable work includes building Harvard University's education platform to help professors monitor and evaluate student progress, among other things. Dan is also the CMO of Randoodle, a marketplace for home improvement founded in 2021. Welcome to Hustle and Grit, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
How was the intro? Did I do you justice?
Yeah, I know you did. Can I get a copy of that recorded? I'm gonna use that when I speak at a conference. I'm just gonna play you live on there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I was looking. I'm like you. No problem. I was looking. I noticed you had a ton of solid experience, and you had a nice journey too, right? So we had a call earlier too, talking about everything that you've gone through, and there's so much that I could have included. I don't know where to start, but that's the hope with this podcast. Hopefully, get to know your journey a little bit more, the ups and the downs, everywhere it's taken you. 20 years, a long time. You don't look that old. So
awesome.
Did you start when you were a kid, 5 years old, 10 years old? But,
yeah, no, I wish. Yeah, no, it's been a long journey, man. It's 20 years looking back on it now. I mean, well, it'll be 20 years exactly 20 years this year. Since I founded the first company, and yeah, it's been a journey. I have to say, it's when you try to look back at what makes 20 years is you start thinking back the first projects, the second, how you got started, and where we ended up now. So definitely grateful for the experience. Shapes you, changes you.
Definitely. And I think the cliche phrase, hindsight is 2020. It really holds true for entrepreneurs too, right? When you're in that moment, you don't know what's what, right? But afterwards, you're like, oh, it all worked out. Even in the hardest times, it worked out. But so I mean, let's start at the beginning. So what did you study in school? Did you go to university, or did you go straight at high school into business? Tell me a little bit about the beginning.
So I went to Guelph University. I studied computer engineering, and I did a business administration degree as well.
Okay. And what compelled you to take that route? Was it any particular reason, or?
Yeah, I mean, so computers were just starting to be, you know, it was after the dot com bubble, and computers were starting to be the norm. Everyone was getting everything, all the apps that we know today were, I guess that was a seed stage of those things. Technology was just booming around developing really fast and booming right around the corner. Every day there was something, every month there was a new device. I remember, my first cell phone in high school was the Nokia, not even the Nokia, the Telus flip phone, or ClearNet as it was back then. And then, things just kept progressing really, really fast. By the time I finished high school, we had the colored screen phones with games on them, and Motorola Razors and all that stuff. So tech was always like, it intrigued me as like, how fast it's changing. And I, coming from a household with two engineer parents, kind of followed in those footsteps. And I said, okay, I like tech. I don't want to go into, civil or any of the other engineering disciplines. So, I picked computer engineering.
So why not just join a tech company as a developer out of school? What compelled you to start your own business?
Well, so I went to university for that, and then I realized that like the landscape in Canada at the time isn't what it is today. Like the incubators that you have in Waterloo, Ottawa, Toronto didn't exist. Like they weren't the norm, right? So you kind of had to stick and get that. You still had to get that degree. You know what I mean? Like it still was either you went to college for computer science or university for computer science and learned how to code, or you did engineering, which you learned how to code, but you also learned the more of the critical thinking and the problem solving. So it was really the only option at the time. Like in 2003, there wasn't really like the incubator space wasn't there. The norm wasn't there. Like, okay, I have an idea. Let me just go and pursue it and forget about post-secondary.
Yeah, no, and I think with my experience in the tech space too, I've noticed even 10 years ago we didn't have that, right?
No.
VC incubators, it was non-existent. It's over the last 5-ish years that we've seen this
Yeah.
massive boom.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So
when
mhm.
Techstars in Toronto kind of gave it a huge boost, but I think, the recruitment that began, I remember in university, there's a lot of people that kept getting that. Oh, I'm in fourth year. I got a co-op offer from a Microsoft or a Google or, one of the big 3 or 4 at the time. And I think that really, as more and more of those opportunities became available, I think that sort of laid the groundwork for people in Canada or in Ontario, at least, to know that they didn't have to go to California to get into tech.
Yeah, yeah, and then now the shift, at least from my perspective, the shift in people willing to take more risks to start businesses themselves, right? Like yourself,
Oh,
where
huge.
the choice of I get a job, I have this 9 to 5, or I take this risk. It might fail,
Yeah.
but I'm going to take the risk, right? So
Yeah,
why
exactly.
take the risk? Why did you decide to take the risk?
To be honest, I mean, I started doing small projects while I was in university. Um, I needed, like every other university kid, right? Like you need a source of income to you want to buy things, right? You need a source of income. And I started doing small little projects here and there. I started doing projects I built a little piece of software that did some students' homework, and saw that was an easy thing. Like I was good at it. I was also learning. I was applying the stuff that I was learning in programming classes to that, to those projects, right? So it started as a need of like, do I get a job, at a restaurant? Do I get a job in the athletic department? Like, what kind of campus job can I get? And then, do you really want to work for minimum wage at the time? I think was what, like $12, $11 an hour. So I just put it, that passion was there, and I always liked, after I created the first thing, I said, okay, this is cool. How do I improve on it? How do I build the next? How do I make the next project better? How do I challenge myself to make it more complex?
And it's interesting. Any entrepreneur you talk to, there's always that element of being a sort of a rule breaker in
Yeah,
the genes, right? Because if you're not inclined to break rules, then you're inclined to follow the path that you're given, right? Which is do
correct.
this, do this, do this.
Yeah,
So I thought it was interesting. You went straight to you guys don't have to do your homework. I'll make you an app.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't probably in hindsight, it probably, the 2020 you're talking about wasn't
Yeah.
the greatest idea at the time. It kind of landed me in a little bit of hot water with the faculty. But nonetheless, I mean, it was around the time I remember if it was second or third year university that the first iPhone came out. Like BlackBerry had come out. You had the side scroll with the whatever 2-color display. And then at the time, I think, was it second or third year university that the iPhone came out, the first one. And I remember having to, I drove to Buffalo, got it, brought it back, popped in, you had at the time they were unlocked. So you popped in your Rogers SIM, and
Yeah.
it blew me away that there was these applications on the phone that you could, make and interact with it. Like that didn't exist. You know what I mean? Like that was the first real, like, wait a second, I don't need to be a massive company to do this. I don't need a massive team. The source code, it was fairly self-explanatory. They had a really good knowledge base. And to be able to do it like off of your laptop and play around and see what you can create. I mean, that was like this is a real thing. This is, the norm, having
Yeah.
everything in the palm of your hand, right? I think there was a lot of that before with Palm Pilot and BlackBerry and whatnot, but they weren't like, it was mostly thought like you're a businessman if you have a BlackBerry. It wasn't
Yeah.
like every kid having it, right?
Or Vince from Entourage.
Yeah.
You remember?
I remember that,
Was
yeah.
it Vince? No, I think it was
Was it
whoever it
Ari?
was, but
I think it was
Ari.
Ari.
Yeah, it was Ari.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
was
was
Ari.
Ari. It was Ari.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it was also Palm Pilot. And it's interesting you bring that up too. It was very elementary too, right? It was just text. You can make documents, things like that, and then
Yeah.
with the iPhone, there was real apps, like you're saying, right? So
Well, there was the Sony one, if you remember. Then the Sony made their own, like, whatever handheld device they had the stylus, and you could play Minesweeper, and I think it was running Windows Mobile, and you could play the
yeah,
chess, Minesweeper, the solitaire on it. But like, it wasn't. I don't even think to this date that they actually ever explored, letting people make their own app. So the iPhone was really like when you got it in your hands, and you had a browser, a real browser,
yeah,
not browsing text-based websites like on the BlackBerry, right? So I think that was like the genesis of like, okay, this is the norm now. In 3-4 years, everyone's gonna have one of these. So how do you
yeah.
adopt this thing?
Yeah. So was that kind of the impetus for staying in tech as your business, kind of your passion for this
Yeah.
actually, to backtrack a little bit, was this your first business, or did you do anything prior to your
So
tech?
I've always been an entrepreneur on some level at heart. I mean, I remember as a kid, I must have been like 12. I wanted to start, I needed some money for hockey cards and whatnot, and started a lawn mowing business, right? Built a little trailer, towed it behind my bike, went to my neighbors, cut their grass. There was always some reason to try to do something on my own, right? Like, and a lot of it also stems from the fact that my parents both owned their business. So I saw it, like, that was sort of like ingrained from a young age that, to start something of your own is always better than to work somewhere else, where, not that it's better, but you're not really in control of the outcome, right? You have a
Mhm.
task, you do it, your boss gives you another task, you do it. You're not, if you see something that you want to do and go off on your own, you kind of have to go and ask permission first. As an entrepreneur, your own business, you kind of sit there and you weigh the pros and cons in your head, and then you just do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost like someone kind of owns your time when you have the job, and
Yep.
whereas with your company, you're more in charge. You have to work still, but
A
if
lot more.
you yeah, exactly, 100%. But
A lot
but
more.
if you need to take that day, you can, right?
Yeah,
More
exactly.
easily, right?
Yeah.
So there is that, and then on the other side too, I think something that is often misunderstood is that there is this idea that having a job gives you stability, just
Yep.
because you cannot see the fact that you can be fired, right? So
True.
people have this
Yep.
job and think, okay, I have this 9 to 5, I have a stable check, and every 2 weeks it's going to come,
Yep.
but the economy could crash and your
Yep.
job's gone, or they just
Absolutely.
downsize or whatever else happens.
A
Whereas
lot of
as an entrepreneur, you're stress test, right? So if
every
you
day,
lose half your business, yeah, exactly.
every
I'm
day,
sure, I'm
every
sure
day
if
there's
you,
a different stressor.
and the thing is, if you tell an entrepreneur, okay, tomorrow you might like you or today you lost half your business,
Yeah.
they're not gonna freak out, right? The
No,
same way, right? As someone who
I mean
lost their
the first
job.
times, maybe the first few times,
Oh, for sure.
right? Like I
But
think the first few times when you have that moment that right? Like you do
mhm,
freak out. Um,
mhm,
but I don't know what it is. Like you have that first freak out moment, and then
mhm.
it kind of passes.
Yeah.
Like I know I had some colleagues that when they would lose their job, they'd be like, "Oh," and then they would go into like these weeks of like antisocial, being antisocial, and not going out and not enjoying, and it's sort of like the food tastes different, right?
Yeah.
But as an entrepreneur, I don't know what it is. It's like you have maybe because you have so many ups and downs
Mhm.
that it's like, oh, it's just another Monday.
Yeah.
Or you can get a
It's
call on a Saturday afternoon, oh, a server crash, we lost half the client's data. Okay, cool.
yeah.
Like we'll figure it out. Like you kind of get conditioned to it. I
Yeah.
think it
Yeah.
happens more
Yeah.
often to the entrepreneur than it does to someone that's in a 9 to 5. Like they don't have those moments
Mhm.
as
Your
frequent.
stress test, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
No,
mean,
no,
you
I
may have a delivery or a deadline for your boss that you don't make, but you don't. I don't think you have those real. Oh, I have 12 people that I have that depend on me for this job, and I made a bad move, or the deal that we hoped was going to happen didn't happen, and now how do I break it that I can only employ 10 people, or whatever the circumstance may be, right? I don't think it's on the
mhm.
same. It's not the same magnitude.
100%. I think it's more when we've seen this too. Like it's when you start growing your team, part of a manager's role or even an executive's role is defining the employee's role, right?
Yeah,
So if you're defining the employee's role, then you're really also in a way defining the maximum stress that they're able to take because you're not going to put too much workload on someone,
absolutely.
because you want them to be happy in that job.
Yep,
So it's designed in a way where if you have a job, you're going to be stressed. You're going to have work in any company. You're going to have work on you. You're going to have to use your brain. No one's
yeah,
saying it's easy, but at the end of the day, there is a limit to the amount of stress that's being put on you,
you're
and
protected.
exactly you're protected. But if you're
That's
out on your own, like you
yep,
said, it's like anything could happen, ups and downs. It happens so many times. You're like, okay, now I know. Like this is the
yeah.
reality. This is the real world,
And it
right?
turns
So.
out usually after a while, the problems end up being the same problems.
Mhm,
And then you end up improving your process. I mean, you guys are doing the process stuff, right? So you
mhm,
improve that person's process, and then that failure or that doesn't happen as often,
mhm.
but then you get new ohs.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's a constant kind of iterative approach towards that process as well. So talking about related to this topic too. So facing challenges, adversity. What do you feel in your journey was the most challenging part? What do you feel was challenging? I guess.
You know what? I think it's when you first, especially when you have a net new service or a net new product that you're trying to bring out, and we still face it to this day, is the no's, the non-belief in your initial offering, if you will. So that, I think, for me personally, people saying no, like, they need your service, but they don't believe that you can deliver, so they say no. And that initial, getting those
Mhm,
first 4, 5, 6 projects completed successfully, and having that, you don't believe me, okay, ask this client that I just worked with.
mhm.
Getting that base of credibility was probably the most challenging part. And now it's a
Okay.
little bit,
Yeah.
that's evolved when we put on a new project or a new platform. You mentioned Rendoodle. That's one of the new ventures we have. It's the same, but like, it's almost like you're facing the same challenges in a net new space, and you're sitting there and saying, well, hold on a second, I built all of these platforms, and after all these years, you still need that validation. So I think I guess that's the most challenging part of the journey, having to always make sure that you have that validation.
Yeah. Yeah. And hearing those no's and keep on pursuing the goal, right? For 20 years, for example, right? So you kept on going, you hear those no's, you keep going, you hear those no's, you keep going.
Yep.
I always turn to this. I know it's a very like old school kind of definition of um, of this experience, but
Yep.
I always turn back to the cardinal virtues, right? So it's if you look at the cardinal virtues, where I think it was the Catholic Church, but it's temperance, prudence, fortitude, and I forget the last, justice, right? So and those are the things that you're forced to develop, right? So you hear that no, you need the courage to get up again,
Yep.
right? And you need the patience to pursue that goal. You need the fortitude to keep on going,
Yep.
right? And then justice also has the balance of, okay, I need to also be merciful to myself and kind
Yep.
of take that break, right? I screwed up, but I'll keep going, right? And I'll get to my goal. But
Yep.
um, getting to a
You also
more
have to be
positive
honest
side.
with
Yeah,
it, right? You have
yeah.
to
Go
be
ahead.
honest with the idea. You have to be honest with the idea, right? After, you know, in our industry, in tech and in especially on the creative side of things, like if it's a bad idea, no amount of amazing marketing is going to save a bad idea, right? Like if your fundamentals aren't there, you could have all the
Mhm.
determination you want. But you also have to, like, it's that justice part. You have to be real with yourself and understand, like, do I have it, or is there a reason 100 people are telling me no and not one person has told me yes?
That's a very good point. And I find that's the entrepreneurs that I've met. I think I mentioned too earlier. I was in the VC space for a while.
Yep.
I'm on the board for a sizable merchant bank as well. And what I found is, I like the way that you phrased it, being honest with yourself, but at the same time, it's you come across entrepreneurs who think, okay, I heard this kind of cliche story of everyone said no, but I kept going and I succeeded, right? So so it's
Yeah.
like it's like, yeah, everyone said no and you kept going, but you also have to, like you said, be honest with yourself and say, okay, maybe everyone's saying no and they're right this time, right?
Yeah.
You don't know that. You have to be
Yeah.
able to make that distinction between they can't see it or maybe I can't see it,
Yeah.
right?
But I feel that there's a market for everything. And I'll say
Mhm.
that with an asterisk. So any idea you have is not necessarily a bad idea, but the purpose of having an idea is to make something of it and have mass adoption. Because if you make an app that has 5 users, your idea wasn't bad. Those 5 users validated your hypothesis, and you made an app. But did you have, are you Instagram where you have, 200 million users? Like that's a different validation, right? So yeah, a lot of people can say I said, said no to my idea, I kept going and I made it work. But being truthful with yourself was, when you started the idea, did you think you were going to be Instagram, or did you think you're going to have 5 users?
Exactly. Well said. Well said. War Stories is a hustle and grit podcast series sponsored by Treadstone Associates. Treadstone has worked with hundreds of businesses to help them dominate their industries. Our success led to the development of a simple 4-stage special ops program called the War Room. The War Room's mission objective is simple: build systems and processes with 3 goals: reduce expenses, increase revenue, and ultimately transform the business owner from a manager to a CEO, from a soldier to a general. Each of the 4 battles in the War Room focuses on a different aspect of your business, from accounting, operations, legal, and more. The foundation of each battle is the battle blueprint. The battle blueprint is a strategic plan prepared by a Treadstone general after evaluating your business's strengths and weaknesses. The battle blueprint includes specific, actionable steps to secure mission objectives. It is time to gather your troops and prepare for battle. For a limited time, you can receive Stage 1 battle blueprints for just $99. That is a $3,500 value. In addition, we are also waiving the fees for Stage 2, 3, and 4 battle blueprints. That is a $29,000 value for free. Click the link below to learn more and to schedule your free enlistment call today. So let's talk a little bit about now.
Yeah.
So we talked about your journey. So Espress Labs, you guys
Correct.
have done some very interesting clients as
Yep.
well. Um, what do you guys do right now? What is kind of your main service?
So Espress Labs is a full service digital agency. We take the creative and we marry that with the tech. Not always in every project, but we operate in its simplest forms. We offer the creative services, whether it's branding, art direction, augmented reality, virtual reality, etc., video production, commercial production, and anything in between, to adding the tech side, which is full software development, e-commerce, mobile applications, the tech part of the AR VR experience, and just applied consultancy. So
Okay.
most of the time we try to marry the client comes to us and says, okay, I have the creative idea and then I have to develop it somehow. Not always the case.
Okay, so to kind of define the category, so you're saying you're a full service marketing agency, and then you also are a full service software development company. Is that a good way to
I would say
segregate? Or
yeah, I would say digital agency. The
okay,
traditional your marketing, Madison Avenue marketing agency isn't
okay,
really our definition. There are some obviously big players in that space. It's not really us. Um, Essentially, we went down that road, backtracking, because there was always, we do a creative project or a web project, and then there was, okay, how do I add this component? How do I take my website and now sell stuff? So that kind of grew our service offering, but it's centered around the main focus is marrying the creative with the tech.
okay, I get what
There's
you
a lot of
mean. Okay,
marketing
yeah,
agencies
yeah,
that'll
yeah.
stay there and say, okay, well, I have this new phone and this is the marketing pitch for it, or this is the sample audience, or this is your target demographic that's going to want to do that, and that's their consultancy, and they've given you a marketing plan. We actually
Hmm.
take that marketing plan, we can develop it, or we can execute any part of it, or develop and execute end to end.
Okay, I get what you mean. Because at the end of the day, your website is obviously a fundamental aspect of of a client's marketing
Yeah,
plan, strategy, everything, right? So and it requires the tech side.
but everything
So
in and around it as well, right? So
mhm.
I want to start a business, I want to brand it. So our creative arm does the branding, and then I don't take that branding and apply it to my product. Okay, we do the digital product design, the renderings, etc., and then I want to sell it, or then I want to take that brand and I want to apply it to my mobile app idea. So we build that all together.
Okay, and I think this question might be broad, too broad. I don't know. You can tell me. Do you have is there a typical journey for your client, for a client that wants to work with you guys, and what does that look like?
So typically, a client will either source us through a referral or directly from our website. Their journey would the project comes to our intake team. Our intake team looks over the RFP if there is one. If not, we book a client with a call with a client, sort of get the high level of what they're doing. Then our team sits down and creates a scope outline. We refine the scope with the client, and then set those milestones, achievable milestones, realistic milestones, and then the project goes into contract and funding and then development.
Okay, and are you is there kind of a specific type of client, industry, size, anything that you guys work
No,
with,
not
or is
really.
it
I mean, we've
broad?
worked with startups. We've worked with companies that have. We've worked with clients that have an idea for a startup, and through the discovery process, doing that, figuring out what needs to be done, they realize that it's not for them, kind of thing. We've worked with startups that had an idea, we built it, and it's fully functional. And then we worked with a lot of established brands and multinationals, right? Like, we're fortunate for the work we did with Adidas, Harvard, Netflix. It's anything far in between. I mean, there's not a vertical. We try to stay out of the marijuana industry. It's just there's so much um, competition in that industry, if you will. So it's not really our area. But other than that, we have projects in in pretty much every sort of customer profile.
What unless you have a client confidentiality provision, so can you tell us more about any of the Adidas or Netflix, what you guys are doing? Or?
Yeah, so for Adidas, we've done quite a few projects. I mean, Adidas is probably one of the earlier, through some personal relationships, the earlier projects that we were able to use as that base groundwork to convince people. We did the Adidas University Challenge here in Ontario, which pit universities against each other with their student body voting, and they were vying for like a $250,000 grant for their sports facilities. We've done their scratch and save, one of the very first scratch and saves on a touch phone for Adidas. We've done product finders, in-store shopping apps. All their digital store locators are done by us. So they've been quite a great partner to have.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
it's always fun when you work with a brand that wants to push the boundaries, right? Like, I mean, that's our ideal client, a client that wants to come in and says, I have this idea. I don't really have any boundaries. Like, let's see what we can how do we make the best outcome?
You get the creative juices flowing.
Creative, but also creative on the tech side, right? Like a lot of clients that'll come in will have a predefined idea of how they want to achieve something, and that kind of they put their mind in a box and don't really realize that there's so many more creative things you could do with that idea. And the fun part, I guess, is the scoping of the project, where you get to outline that and show them examples, and they say, "Oh wow, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know my idea could morph into that."
Interesting. So it's not just you're not just providing the service of building out their solution. It's more you're working together to kind of get towards that best.
Yeah, we're not a code shop where you say, "This is my project. Go ahead and develop it for me." Like that's not really our service offering. We like to sit there and work with the client to understand the needs and really like play out the idea and say, okay, this is your project idea today, phase 1. This is phase 2. Like, where do you want to go with this? Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that throughout the process, they're involved. Nothing is worse than a client at the end of a project who hasn't been involved and doesn't know what's going on. I think that's probably our industry's biggest nightmare, is getting to the end. The client looks at the project and says, oh, what's this part? Or why didn't this happen? Or why doesn't this work the way I think it works, right? Like, non-involved stakeholders are probably the worst thing to have.
No, 100%. I think that's one of the things that we focused on. So we at Treadstone Law, our the law firm under Treadstone Group, similar problem is it's a service firm, and then you have clients who get to the end of a service and they're kind of maybe upset or confused that, oh, you didn't do enough, or you didn't do anything, or whatever else. They don't have an understanding of what occurred and the final result. So that was part of what the focuses of the application that we built internally for our firm processes, was helping educate the consumer about the journey, the legal process during the process, so that by the end they're not surprised, right?
Exactly.
So it's kind of similar, right? Except with you guys, it's like you're spending months building out some kind of software maybe, and then now at the end, if they're not happy, that's trouble, right?
That's the problem. That's why we involve our clients in all the decisions, and when we face a problem, when we scope a project, because they will get to finish the finish line with us and then realize, I didn't explain to you my business case, therefore this feature isn't really built the way I need it to work for my, and not to say that at that point it can't be fixed and you can't go back and do a revision and whatnot, but it saves us time, it saves them money. It's a win-win for everybody.
No, and I like the outlook. Because if you're taking a kind of, you do this out, and like someone prescribes you the work, and then you do the work and then you give it to them, then it's very detached, right? You're merging, you're working together. You're more as in a teamwork environment with your client, right? So I like that approach.
Yep.
So Randoodle, what's Randoodle? Tell us about Randoodle.
So Rendoodle emerged out of an idea that there has to be a better way to do a home renovation. Rendoodle is essentially using AI to guide a non-DIYer how to properly obtain a renovation quote for any type of renovation for their home, select the appropriate quote, labor and material, financing if needed, and get a result that they're expecting.
Okay. So I feel like there's a personal story here, or what led you to the idea?
Yeah. So the personal story is that every single time you go to try to find a trade, I'll give you an example. Was looking for an appliance installer. Had an appliance, found him on Kijiji. Appliance installer came to the house. Found out that the guy was actually the IT manager or one of the IT members at a power plant in Peterborough. I thought he was an appliance installer. So I trusted hooking up an oven, the fridge, installing all that stuff to a guy that was just a handyman, but he played himself off as this is what he does. This is his bread and butter. So the other co-founder and my partner over at Espress Labs, Jordan Peluso, we figured out there's got to be a way that we can use AI and tech to make sure that when you're shopping your renovation idea to different service providers, that you're always comparing apples to apples.
Okay.
So we built Randoodle. It is, like I said, it's an AI-powered renovation platform. You go online, you type in your postal code, you pick interior, exterior, or if you just want a home service, like I want my windows cleaned or ducts cleaned. Like how nice would it be if you get to pick when you want your ducts cleaned instead of receiving 15 calls a week for it?
Okay.
Right? So you go on there, you fill out the AI algorithm that then sources a material list for your renovation type by industry experts, not just some random list of materials. You get a price for the materials, you get a price for the labor from a certified installer contractor that has all their licenses, has insurance, has a reputation, is trained by the manufacturer of the product they're installing. And then you can pick and choose. I want this contract. You're provided 3 options for the labor, 3 options for the materials, or we try to if the project leans that way. And then you get to pick. I want the good, better, best. You get that in the material side of things, and then you get 3 contractors that all have maybe different ratings, different schedules, different availabilities, and you get to pick and choose, and then fund your project. The scope of it is to make sure that you don't part with your money before you're happy as a consumer. So the money goes into escrow with on the legal side of things with Rendoodle, and then as the milestones of each project, like we took a little bit out of how we do projects at Espress Labs, right? There's milestones. We invoice for a milestone once we complete it and the client accepts. So similarly on the Rendoodle platform, as they've come to your house and they took the tile out of your bathroom, that's a phase, right? The demolition phase. You say it's done, they say it's done, then we release that milestone payment to the contractor. They put the new tiles in, your vanities, etc. That's another milestone, right? And you agree with these milestones when you're picking the contract, like when you're doing it, right? So the money you never get, the consumer is never exposed to, hey, I gave 90% of the project value to a contractor, and then tomorrow the guy's phone number is disconnected. So you're always protected that way, and we managed to do that with AI, with our partnership with the big 5 banks that can fund your project, with a comprehensive, legal aspect to it. We vet all the people that join the platform, so they go through a security check, they go through a license check, they go through a Better Business Bureau validation check. Like you're getting people that, if you say you're a plumber, you have a plumber's license and you're a plumber and you're licensed and you have insurance, etc.
Okay, so they're like, they're freelancers that kind of join your app, and then you connect
Even
people.
established companies. We have roofing companies that have been around for 40 years.
Okay, interesting.
And instead of them, they'd rather get a request to quote a project from our platform than someone calling them to say, hey, come take a look at my roof. and they never end up, maybe that call, they get a voicemail, they call back, that guy never, or, he or she never answers the phone or whatnot. So we have from your, I wouldn't say they're hobbyists or DIYers, because they have to have all the proper setup for their business. Like, you just can't pick up a hammer tomorrow and you're on our platform as a drywaller. Like, you have to go through you have to have your HST number, your taxes, or all that stuff. So it's for small contractors all the way through to big contractors, especially as the 2023 roadmap starts taking shape. We're moving from residential and adding commercial as well.
Okay, interesting.
So all of your real estate property managers, etc., you can go on there and say, well, I have a business unit where the convenience store client moved out and now it's going to be, I don't know, a hair salon. So I need you to go and, I need to book in the demolition, re-drywall, new tile, whatever, fixtures, chairs, whatever through there. Or I have a rental property on the other side of the country that I need, my tenant moved out. I need you to go in there and tell me what it costs to repaint the unit or fix the drywall or whatever.
Interesting. So it's like sort of like a general contractor app, almost. Like the app is functioning as.
But you don't have to worry about sourcing the materials. Like that's we partnered with Castle Building Centers, has over like 350 locations in Canada, spread out across the country, and we're fortunate for that partnership, because then they get to source the materials for the job. So you're getting quality materials, and you're not waiting, like you're not hiring a handyman in hopes that the materials will show up eventually. Yeah. So your lead time on materials, your lead time on the contractor, you put the two together and you get your renovation outcome. There's a little project management into it as well on the back end. You can see how every phase is progressing. If they said it's going to take them 2 weeks to do your drywall and it's taking a week and a half, then you're early, so on and so forth.
Interesting. A lot of potential. So what do you think, how would you say this compares to something like HomeStars or something, where it's just a review platform for people who do that kind of work?
We have a few competitors in the space. Where we're different is that we put it all together. So like, you can go on our competitors and find a roofer. You still have to then go ahead and call that roofer, have him come and take a look, have him, quote the materials. Then you want a second opinion. Then you have to call another roofer book an appointment with him. Like, it's great that you can find these contractors and these trades on these platforms, but they're not really, they don't put it all together for you. Like, there's still a lot of work that you have to do. Whereas with our platform, it's a lot easier. So, then we have competitors in the States that have their own teams. So the limitation there is, okay, we have the material and the team, but they're not everywhere. Like, they have 100 employees, 100 contractors. So like, how do you then service the entire country? Right. Yeah. It's a different business model. A lot of our competitors, and I'm not going to name who, there's a pay to play system. So if you're a terrible contractor, you can still be listed as, top rated on these platforms. Yeah. So, okay. I get what you mean. Yeah. Bad reviews to go away. You know what I mean? Like, we have that authenticity where after the project is done, you rate the contractor, you rate the material provider, they rate you. So if you're like a belligerent landlord, where every single time someone comes and paints the units you have, you're yelling at them, like, that's noted, right? So you have that peer-to-peer review. Okay, which interesting. We work as a moderation team. Should there be something that's, out of left field or an outlier, but generally we don't. There's not a case where we delete a review. Interesting. So it's similar to like the Uber model, where you're reviewing the rider and the driver as well. Yep. And rating. Yep. Yeah. And what I've found, at least, from my exposure to that space, is you hear a lot of stories about people saying, I hired, just like you were saying too, I hired someone and they didn't show up, or they took a deposit and they did a bit of work and they left. Right. And or worse, they did the work and they did it bad. I did a bad
Yeah.
job. My
Yeah.
roof is leaking, or I have a leak from my second floor to my main floor. Yeah.
And it's very common. But yeah, you were going to say?
Yeah. It's just, you'll be surprised how many requests we get from people who are mid renovation asking how they can transfer it, or do we know this contractor and how to find him?
Oh, wow.
Like
Yeah.
it's a big part of the daily journey on the support staff, dealing with the emails and the phone calls with regards to this. Or, oh, I see that, you also deal with this manufacturer. Well, I can't get a hold of their support team. Like there's a lot of, but it's so prevalent in the industry, in the renovation industry, and more so on the residential side. Because people always tend to think that they can find someone who can do it cheaper.
On Kijiji.
That's sort of the start. No, seriously. Like how many times you ask your friends, you say, oh, I did this. Oh, I had a guy who could do it for less.
Yeah.
But the guy who could literally do it for less is the IT guy at the power plant. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain level where people, like a snow plowing, like that's one of the services that's the most, I guess, December comes around and everyone's trying to book a snow service on Rendoodle. But there's a cost that people need to understand. Like, hey, my guy will do it for $40 a snowfall. Well, I have a guy who will do it for $10, and you have to sit there and you think like, why would someone drive out to your house to plow your driveway for $10? Like, where's the reasonable margin? Chances are, on a heavy snowfall, when that guy's taken 50 contracts in your neighborhood, he's not going to be able to come to your house. And then you get well, why didn't he show up? And then I get a bad review and then I want my money back. Like there's a certain level of common sense that is that is like overlooked. And then we get into these situations.
100%. And then there's also another common story, like what you were saying too. I paid someone a monthly amount to shovel my snow for this winter. And obviously, if that person is not charging much, then they can't subcontract. And now, if there's a storm, they can't be everywhere at the same time, right? So it's just logical that you're not gonna.
Or why doesn't the guy cut my grass every Tuesday? One week it's Tuesday, 1 week it's Wednesday, 1 week it's back to Tuesday, then it's back to Thursday. Then we try to. I mean, using tech, you can eliminate a lot of these things. So that was the goal of bringing everything we've learned using tech and building platforms for whether it's startups or multinationals and whatnot, and say like, how do we use all this digital help to make this archaic industry better?
Yeah. And I think your escrow is really a major
it's huge.
Major benefit. Yeah. Like you don't have that right now. And now with the courts being backlogged for God knows how long. Right. Yeah. So it's like you got to make sure you're protecting yourself. Yeah.
I think they're up to 2 years or something like that, booking 2 years or almost 2 years ahead.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Landlord tenant board is even more like the court system is not reliable right now, at least. Right. Maybe they'll catch up. They'll change. They'll make some improvements. But
we got to build an app for that. We should talk.
Yeah, exactly.
We should talk after this and figure out how we can use tech to your legal experience and our tech experience to make something.
Honestly, it's a major issue, but I think what you guys are doing with the escrow process in this space is going to be a game changer, right? Because
I think so. I think that's probably our biggest difference in how we do it.
Definitely. Okay, so let's we're at I mean I had our conversation divided into 3 sections, but we had some great conversation, and we're already at about 45 minutes. So I want to still get through some more things.
It's a 2-part.
Yeah, honestly, this is a 2-parter. So we'll talk. Maybe schedule another session to run through everything else. But I wanted to get through some kind of interesting questions, right?
Yep.
So at least for me, interesting questions. Hopefully for the viewers as well.
Yep.
So you've been through a ton. You started and grew this your digital agency from 20 years ago, just a startup, to having some notable clients over the years, growing a sizable team. You've built Rendoodle. Seems like there's a lot of kind of growth going on, moving into the commercial space. So if you were to speak to Dan Ephraim, the teenager, right,
Yeah.
and he came up to you and he said, "Hey, what what advice do you have? What should I do? What are the lessons that you wish you knew earlier on in the journey?"
Oh. Um, I mean, there's a lot of lessons. There's a lot of lessons you learn in 20 years. Number one, if it's too good to be true, it generally is. That's a big one. And I guess the second one is learn as much as possible. Like you're going to do any sort of business I would have gotten into, I would have learned more about that business and every facet of it and know every facet of the business in and out. And it's even in my day-to-day now, a lot of the staff will come up, we'll talk about a project and then I'll do something on that project. And they're like, well, I didn't know you used to do this. Well, I've learned every little bit of business, but I wish I learned every little bit of my business earlier. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, no, definitely makes sense.
Like a lot of it, when we started out, a lot of it was, okay, I have no idea how to develop this database. I'm going to hire someone who's an expert in this database. That project came and gone. That client comes back 2 years later, that expert's gone. So you don't need to know everything to the, finite detail about your business, but you need to know every aspect of your business to a degree well enough that you can feel comfortable at night that if that person disappears who you're relying on, you're not in a black box.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest lesson learned, having previous partners and previous contractors and staff and whatnot. You can't just assume that someone has your back. Like, you have to know every part of your business. I think that combined with no one will work at your dream. And I say dream because every entrepreneur starts with a dream. No one will work at your dream as hard as you. So if you're thinking that someone, whether it's someone you pay or a staff member, a contractor, is going to put the same amount of dedication and attention to detail that you are, that's been one that's over 20 years. I've learned that lesson over and over again. So knowing that ahead of time, I mean, every entrepreneur wants to take everyone, or every business person, let's forget entrepreneurs, wants to take everyone at their word. You're going to do this, awesome. You're going to do the best job at it. But that's not necessarily the case. So I think probably above all else is knowing that you're the one that it stops with you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely agree. It's relying on yourself, right? And that requires kind of building the character traits that you feel that you can rely on, right?
Yeah.
So that's important as well. So
That's
ending off, I wanted to. So you had your advice for the younger Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some advice for business owners, executives, anyone who is running a business from the perspective of Dan, the founder or co-founder and CEO of Espress Labs.
Yeah.
What advice would you have in terms of from that perspective for people who have a business?
Be consistent in your branding and consistent in your message. Consistent in consistency in our clients' industries is always the fact that, the like the end all be all. So if you're not consistent in what the message you want to send to your prospective clients, it's not going to be this. So whether it's branding, stay consistent. The McDonald's golden arches are the same all over the globe, right? There's a lot of companies that we see that come to us and say, oh, it's been, I'm going to rebrand and I'm going to redesign my logo and it's not something that, unless you're going through a major shift, it's not something that needs to be done every 18 months. Yeah. Improve, like consistently staying true to your brand is probably one of the biggest strengths that a business can have. Because even with us, I think we've done a small font tweak over the years and maybe gone from color to black and white, but we're always Espress Labs. We've been Espress Labs, and we're always going to be Espress Labs. There's a lot of businesses that today that they're this company, tomorrow they're changing the world with this brand, and then the next year they're back to this brand. You're losing time on something that doesn't matter. Keep consistent and offer your service or product solution and improve that. Like, make that your best product cycle. Like, hey, we have this, revolutionary new mouse. How do we make that mouse better with every product iteration versus how do we market the same mouse that disconnects and the battery lasts 4 hours every year, right? Like, consistently staying true to your brand and true to the what got you there is, I think, the biggest success. I think a lot of people focus on keeping up with their competitor. Like, oh, my competitor went to, showing their product this way. And then they're going to jump on that train where, well, focus on you, because that's going to be here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think that's where having kind of the right people in your corner matters too, right? It's hearing that kind of advice, because what I've found is, at least there is an inclination when you're running a business, whatever stage it's at, whether it's starting off, you're at a mid-level stage or a large enterprise, when things start maybe not going where you want them to go, you look for places to kind of blame. And earlier on, and even at the mid stage, perhaps sometimes at the executive stage, you have the it's because our branding wasn't there. Oh, let's change it again. Oh, it's because our branding wasn't there. Let's change it again.
I think a lot of that is, it's hard to look at your own product and say, this is just a bad product. Or this version of this product is just bad for whatever reason, whether it's durability, I don't know, the tech in it, you cut corners and you outsourced it versus using a good microchip, or your service offering, you're a SaaS model business, and every month you increase the price and take features away, or you're increasing the price and you're never adding a new feature. I think a lot of that, it's hard to look at yourself and say, my product isn't as good as it could be. And it's easier to then say, oh, well, if I rebrand it, that's the reason it's not selling. Well, it's not selling because there's no demand for it. So I think it's hard, it's hard to look at it from your own. Like, we look at some of the service offerings that we had when we first started Rendoodle. It's like, why isn't anyone downloading this? It's amazing. But maybe it's not explained correctly. Maybe it's not, maybe it's just not enough of that offer. And when you're so close to it, like you said, it's good to surround yourself with people that can say, okay, take a step back and look at it from the other side of the table. Are you going to buy this? Or are you going to take this service? Are you going to use this service, or this platform, or this product? And I think that's when you have that moment and saying, hey, you're right. It's not the logo, whether I put a blue logo or a red logo on, it's not going to make a difference. The product itself needs help, or the service itself needs help.
Yeah. Well said. Wise words to end off this insightful discussion. I think there's tons of kind of valuable nuggets in this discussion, that regardless of whether you're starting off in mid stage or at more of an executive function at a large organization, there's valuable information, valuable advice here. Dan, I wanted to thank you for joining us. I think we definitely need to do a second episode if you're up for it. But I appreciate you joining us.
If you want to do a second episode, or you want to get a group together and we can have a barbershop style conversation. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Nice. That
Thank you very much for having me on. Yeah. This has been, you brought me down nostalgia lane. I appreciate that. You let me know how many years I've been at this. And it's been
looking young. War Stories is a hustle and grit podcast series sponsored by Treadstone Associates. Treadstone has worked with hundreds of businesses to help them dominate their industries. Our success led to the development of a simple 4-stage special ops program called the War Room. The War Room's mission objective is simple: build systems and processes with 3 goals: reduce expenses, increase revenue, and ultimately transform the business owner from a manager to a CEO, from a soldier to a general. Each of the 4 battles in the War Room focuses on a different aspect of your business, from accounting, operations, legal, and more. The foundation of each battle is the battle blueprint. The battle blueprint is a strategic plan prepared by a Treadstone general after evaluating your business's strengths and weaknesses. The battle blueprint includes specific, actionable steps to secure mission objectives. It is time to gather your troops and prepare for battle. For a limited time, you can receive Stage 1 battle blueprints for just $99. That is a $3,500 value. In addition, we are also waiving the fees for Stage 2, 3, and 4 battle blueprints. That is a $29,000 value for free. Click the link below to learn more and to schedule your free enlistment call today.